Thank God above. God above. 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 Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock on a mission. Each one of us shares our own vision. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. But I patrolled the streets, all the G's I meet. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. But I patrolled the streets, all the G's I meet. Well, got to stay woke. I like to thank God above. To thank God above. God above. To thank God above. God above. To thank God above. God above.
Saludos! Once again, it's your host, Gabe Morales. I'd just like to reiterate I don't know everything about gangs, but I have noticed some media, some videos, and even some law enforcement sources have referred to many West Coast Chicano Latino gangs as SATs. That is not a term that I hear from very many homeboys I've dealt with. They usually refer to their groups as clicas, barrios, or they'll just use the word gang in their world and culture. Sats is usually a word associated with West Coast Crips and Bloods. Anyways, I try to keep an open mind, but also try to stay accurate. I'm constantly learning and hope you find the information we've been providing on these videos to be beneficial, and I encourage you to hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. We really appreciate your support of this channel. Since we cover the Mara Salvatrucha gang, I thought it'd only be appropriate to cover a much larger gang than MS is in Los Angeles. The 18th Street Gang started on the west side of Los Angeles around 1965. It was made up largely of second-generation Hispanic immigrants and mixed races. In later years, members were often new Mexican and Latino immigrants. Clanton 14th Street is known to be much older than 18th Street. And by the looks of the Pachucos in this picture, they'll be around from at least the 1940s. They're one of the few Sereno gangs around today that still have a 14 in their name, which is usually associated with rival Norteño 14 gangs. Clanton 14 was allowed to keep this designation because they had the 14 before the Mexican Mafia and before any Sur 13 gang umbrella existed. According to veteran Los Angeles Police Detective Bill Dunn, the 18th Street Gang recruited in Los Angeles County juvenile halls like Los Padrinos, as well as in many local high schools on the west side. There were big gang problems at some LA schools, especially Belmont High School, where Clanton and another older gang called Temple Street ruled. As a result, these two gangs often attacked and bullied new kids on the block who joined 18th Street. You can catch an interview with Mr. Dunn covering early gang activity in Los Angeles in a past episode on this channel. According to my sources, who have spoken with some of the original members of 18th Street, a mixed race kid named Rocky Glover came from a family that lived near the corners of 18th Street and Arapahoe, near Pico Union Park on the west side. He originally approached Clanton 14 to start a new clique to be called Clanton 18, but he was rejected because he was not Mexican and they liked C14 the way it was. Rocky and his brother Mark, aka Chino, had a brother Ray, also called Cowboy, who was in the Temple Street gang, but they did not join that gang either. So Rocky and Mark and about a dozen other homeboys started to recruit other youth in the neighborhood to form a new gang, and they called it after the local hood, 18th Street. The Glovers had a lot of enemies and even bucked the Mexican Mafia and family members by disrespecting Joe Morgan, his wife, as well as Daniel Spider Arriaga in the 1970s. Later, Rocky Glover had to go into protective custody at Chuno State Prison for his actions. The Glovers eventually moved to a house up on North Hoover by Santa Monica Boulevard. As Detective Dunn recalls, the gang grew rapidly in the area of Union Avenue because the gang hung out at a park there, which is located next to the Salvation Army Depot. It is the reason why that clique was referred to as Red Shield. There were black gangs in the mid-1960s, but the Crips and Bloods had not yet evolved. That would come a few years later. And there have been some black members of 18th Street. In fact, when the Emmy Edict came out in the early 1990s, barring Sureño gangs from having any black members, an exception was made for 18th Street, since they protested that rule and said they had many solid homeboys backing up their clica who were black. They would sometimes use these members as shooters in black Crip and Blood neighborhoods. It should be noted there were no formal gang units in LA yet when 18th Street started. Some of the original 18th Street West Side cliques were Tiny Locos, Tiny Winos, Pee-wees, Winos, Malditos, as well as Bonnie Bray, Hoover, and Magnolia Locos, which were all named after LA streets. Other sizable cliques included 54th, King Boulevard G's, 106th Street, Columbia Little Cycles, Pico Locos, K-Dubs, Diablos, Bebitos, Shadow Park Locals, Smiley Drive, Alsace Locals, and Rancho Park, as well as 7th and Broadway, Wall Street, and Rimpao Boulevards. Today, 18th Street are often rivals with Florencia 13 in South Los Angeles and nationwide, including in Washington State, where I have documented both gangs. Florencia 13 also claims Sureño and also fall under control of the Mexican Mafia. Florencia is actually the second biggest gang in LA, not Mara Salvatrucha. Florencia and 18th Street have always been rivals, but the situation got worse when the 18 started a Southside clica in the late 1980s. 18, which means 18 in Spanish, also has a presence on the east side of Los Angeles. While they resisted the Mexican Mafia for more than a dozen years, eventually 18th Street came under the M umbrella and aligned with Sureños in jail and prison by the 1980s. Some members only claim 18 because they are forced to due to the neighborhood they inhabit, and are really just associates more than hardcore members. Other members merely hang around the gang for popularity and unearned notoriety. Many youngsters don't feel like they have much choice but to join and are very lost.
But you're from 18th Street, right?
Yeah, I'm from 18th Street.
Show me your tattoos.
I'll show you the tattoo.
So you got a 1 and you got an 8.
And an A.
And what do you think your mom and dad will say about you being in 18th Street?
They gonna tell me that's bad for you because my dad, he don't know I'm from 18th Street, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like I keep low and I stay up and walking around.
Right.
That's it.
You're not afraid you're gonna get shot?
Yeah, I know I'm gonna get shot, but I don't know when and what time, you know. The only do you get shot, that's it, you die.
So what do you want to do in the game? What do you want to be?
I wanna be like it's Friday and everybody get respect for me, you know what I mean?
You want to gain respect?
Yeah, I want to get respect for everybody, you know what I mean?
Right. So why should you be in a gang?
Huh?
Why are you in a gang?
That's why, because I want to get respect for enemies and people, you know what I mean?
Right. How big is 18th Street right here?
It's too big.
How big? Like 100, 200, 300?
Nah, not that much, like 40, 50.
Right here?
Yeah.
Why 18th Street? Why not another gang?
Because 18, that's the best.
It's the best?
Like most other Latino gangs, 18th Street members are often initiated. And for 18th Street, this means being beaten in for 18 seconds. By the early 1990s, 18th Street once again faced heat as they resisted taxation by the Mexican Mafia and found themselves in trouble, so they were placed on the green light list, as was covered in part 2 of the Mexican Mafia on this channel. One of the individuals I had to lock down back in 1991 at New Folsom due to this threat was Eddie Garza, CDC number B96513, who was an old 18th Streeter who I had on my yard. The green light on 18 was later lifted by Mexican Mafia member Ruben Nidal Castro in the mid-1990s. Nidal was allegedly present in Oregon and Washington State about a year before he ordered Greedy Valerio hit on November 14, 1994. Nidal is currently doing life without parole in the BOP at the ADX Max, located in Florence, Colorado. The Columbia Little Cycles were one of the most violent and financially successful 18th Street cliques. They were held up in the community as examples of how to do business. Soon, federal investigators seized approximately $500,000 in cash from gang members' hideouts. A Columbia Little Cycles leader was indicted on a RICO case. Francisco Puppet Ruiz Martinez became a Mexican Mafia member and is presently in federal custody due to the RICO. I talk about him more in the Mexican Mafia episode part 2 on this channel. Other Colombia Little Cycles members who were in Puppet's car included guys like Alberto Nefti Pina, who is currently housed in the BOP. He was included in the RICO case with 21 other members of the same clique. Nefti won't be released for another half dozen years. The RICO indictment mentioned Ramiro Greedy Valerio of carrying out 3 executions, including the killing of Javier Lepti Casales, who was an 18th Street member who had disrespected Puppet's wife, who was addressed as being mom by younger 18th Street members. 18th Streeter Juan Termite, aka Feo Romero, and his driver were shot multiple times on November 1st, 1999. They survived the assassination attempt, and Romero went on to cooperate with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in major cases. Also mentioned was the death of Mexican Mafia collections rep Carlos Tuco Lopez and his girlfriend, who cruised through 18th Street territory in his new $35,000 Chevy Suburban. 18th Street gunmen, including Termite, who was the prosecution's star witness, testified that he and another 18th Streeter killed Truco instantly by lighting them up with 30 rounds of automatic gunfire. Anthony Coco Zaragoza was an 18th Street hitman who earned his black hand by killing. He referred to Puppet Martinez as dad and Janie as mom. It was Coco who kicked off the drama with the Mara Salvatrucha in the Bureau of Prisons back in early 2020. 18th Street killer William Crook Vasquez was apprehended on October 13, 2005, after an 18-month hunt by members of the Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI task force. Vasquez's string of murders began in January 2002 when he fatally shot 2 victims 3 times each. In March 2005, Vasquez, along with his accomplices, was convicted of first-degree murders committed at a private party at a moose lodge by Sunset Park in Santa Monica. Vasquez's last victim was killed in 2005, shot 20 times, 9 of the shots into the head. Vasquez was also charged with 1 count of attempted murder and 2 counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, and he was suspect in many other cases. Manuel Smiley Tristan was an 18th Street member back in the day who killed a cop and became a Mexican Mafia member until he dropped out. But he was not the only one. In August of 1998, 26-year-old LAPD officer Philbert Cuesta Jr., a member of the now defunct Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums, or CRASH unit, was sitting in his patrol car monitoring activity at a gang party when an 18th Streeter walked up to his patrol car and shot him through his back window in the back of the head. It was the cowardly murder of a cop. In April of 2001, the 18th Street gang allegedly put out a green light on LAPD as they dared cops to respond to their area. And more recently, in 2020, 2 Montebello men pled guilty to the 2015 slaying of Downey police officer Ricardo Galvez, who was shot once in the face while sitting in his BMW in a parking lot near the police station. Both men were alleged to be members of 18th Street. In 2006, a self-professed former 18th Street gang member, Hector Weasel Marroquin, was accused of being involved in criminal activities. During the same time, he was running a well-funded anti-gang program called No Guns with his son, Hector Jr. The elder Marroquin boldly flashed gang signs in multiple pictures. At the same time, he was supposed to be trying to get kids out of gangs. The No Guns program, as I said, was well-funded with government grants and had lots of political support. In January 2008, Hector Sr. was sentenced to 8 years in prison for his crimes. Hector Jr. was convicted for his earlier role in a home invasion robbery. This case shows how easily gangs and their associates can infiltrate gang intervention programs as cover for criminal activity, so they should be closely monitored and audited. And in no way am I downplaying the importance of intervention programs. I know many good ones and many good individuals who are sincere in their beliefs of trying to get kids out of the gang lifestyle. But I also know that sometimes some individuals try to pimp the game. Per Rolling 20's original gangster Skip Townsend, 18th Street began moving into the West Adams area of Los Angeles in 1983, first moving into Greer Crip gang turf, and then around the jungles in Black Pea Stones turf. This started a war in 1993. Soon, the Rolling 20's Bloods got sucked into the beef, and that is still ongoing to date, as well as Black Pea Stones versus 18th Street. 18 has several cliques in several other states. In fact, the very first documented 18th Street website was actually ran out of Walla Walla, Washington. in Washington State. I find that very interesting because that is where the Washington State Penitentiary is located. At one time, the end of the line in Washington State. The town also happens to have a lot of 18th Street gang members. 18th Street was also big in Portland, Oregon. So naturally, there were a problem in Oregon Department of Corrections, as well as in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Their evolution will be covered more in future segments on gangs in the Pacific Northwest. Like many other West Coast gangs, 18th Street is more of a horizontal structure than a vertical one. Although the gang is well networked throughout Los Angeles and there is representation on the Mexican Mafia, there is no known central leadership nationally or internationally. Out on the streets, there are shot callers, such as Puppet Martinez, and their assistants, sometimes inaccurately called lieutenants by the media, and foot soldiers, which are soldados who work beneath them. But once again, not all Sureños are foot soldiers for the Mexican Mafia, and neither are 18th Street soldiers. 18th Street has actively absorbed graffiti tagging crews into their gang in the past. Cliques generally function independently and are based on age group, but they will join forces when faced with a threat in combating rival gangs. They use many different symbols. For instance, they may use 187 with the 18 being more pronounced. 187 is a California penal code for murder. They may also use the Mayan symbol for 18, which is 3 bars and 3 dots. They even put out their own music and videos. Many times, 18th Streeters will wear gray and black Raiders colors from the days when the Raiders played in LA from 1982 to 1994. This is a time period of huge growth of the 18th Street gang. They may also have tattoos of XV3 or Roman numeral 18, 666, which equals 18, 18, or simply spell out 18th Street. They may also tattoo themselves with the word BES, which stands for Barrio 18th Street. As mentioned in the Mara Salvatrucha video on this channel, the word Mara means gang and is frequently used by Mara Salvatrucha. Most 18th Streeters will stay away from that term or anything else associated with their hated rivals, preferring to address themselves as a barrio with the correct spelling beginning with a B. 18th Street are usually rivals with MS here and in other countries. For instance, I took the bottom picture in the dress-out room at the King County Jail in Seattle, Washington. At first, I thought maybe an 18th Street gang member had used a white marker stolen from staff, but we didn't have any white markers in our supply room, only black ones. Then, upon further inspection, I saw it was white powder toothpaste that we give inmates at receiving, and the culprit had mixed it with water to make his graffiti disrespect by crossing out MS with an X as part of the gang's number, XV3, and then he wrote 187. I guess he only knew the California Penal Code for murder and not the revised Code of Washington number for murder. 18th Street has whole towns claiming allegiance to them in El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico, with large cliques in Mexico City, DF, and Tijuana, Baja California. Whether it be out on the street or in prison, both Barrio 18 and Mara Salvatrucha are very powerful in parts of Central America where they have been deemed terrorist organizations. 18th Street can also be found in parts of Mexico and even in parts of Europe and other parts of the world. As International Latino Gang Investigators Association Central American members I spoke with and experts like Anibal Serrano of the Small Wars Journal have noted, 18th Street in Central America operates differently than 18th Street in the US. In Honduras, for example, the leaders of Barrio 18 are called toros or bulls, and each toro has cliques that operate under him, and a homie leads each one. Each homie has several soldados or soldiers underneath him. As I stated several times, while in the United States, 18th Street may have many different gang enemies, in Central America, 18th Street's primary adversary is MS-13, and both battle for power and illicit funds. 18th Street is less cohesive and disciplined in Central America, and this has impacted its structure and activities, but also made them sometimes harder to track. In El Salvador in 2005, 18th Street splintered into 2 main factions, the Revolucionarios, or revolutionaries, and the Sureños, the Southsiders. In 2012, Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18 reached a peace treaty agreement. Murder rates went down immediately, and since then, relations have been on and off. And when it is off, people die. Parents in Central America and here in the U.S. need to do everything they can do to prevent their children from joining these gangs. Intervention workers who are legit, not like Hector Marroquin, need our help to get kids out of the lifestyle And if that doesn't work, we need well-trained and professional police forces to use appropriate suppression methods. I hope you found this video to be helpful. This is Gabe Morales signing off. Till next time,
Like to think God above. God above. Like to think God above. God above. Like to think God above.